Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the Super Sunday, the end of Tirreno-Adriatico and Paris-Nice, as well as Trofeo Binda, a teaser before Milan-San Remo next weekend, a very prestigious women's race. But first, we will do Paris-Nice. Before the stage, Matteo Jorgensen leading GC, not with the huge margin, 37 seconds ahead of Florian Leibowitz, who was able to gap him yesterday, and it looked like Jorgensen couldn't respond at the end of Oran. Aronsman on 120. In third, Stora 225, Almeida 240, Sheffield 254. So a lot of riders between 225 and Tejada in 10th on 336. So there's some shuffling available there, as well as, but yeah, Jorgensen, his closest issue was Florian Leibowitz. The stage today is 121 Ks of medium mountains. They do a false light drag uphill with some hills before the Col de la Porte, 7Ks, 7%, then the Côte de Pays, 7Ks, 7%, but steeper sections. Then a false flat descent to La Turbie, where, yeah, you really, like, it's really a pedaling descent before the steep Col d'Ez, 1,600 meters, 9%, bonus sprint on top, a short plateau for another descent to the Col de Quatre Chemins, which is 3.6 Ks, 8.7%. The last 1,800 meters of that is about 11% with steep sections. Can't remember, but I think that might have been where Simon Yates dropped Roglic at the end of Paris-Nice 3 years ago before a fast descent into Nice. The weather was good, sun was out, so it was really the race to the sun. Any other news before the stage, Benji?
Yes, sir. Oh, well, news or fake news? That's what we got to talk about for a second, because Astana came to Twitter this morning and decided to post a tweet saying that Paris-Nice is, as a test, allowing substitutions on the final stage, and Ballerini is replacing Bol, or the other way around in this race. And I gotta ask you first, before the stage, when you first saw that tweet, how long did you believe it?
0 seconds, because I knew Davide Ballerini lives in Nice and he just came onto the bus to say hello to his teammates.
Okay, that's kind of sad. A lot of people believed it, though.
Also, I was
my immediate...
No, it's not true. I was like, nah, that's no way that's true, because then I would have known about it, and if Visma hadn't been contacted about it, fucking would have put in Wilco Kelderman for this stage, you know? Substitute Jorgensen, Vingegaard out for Kelderman to control the final stage. So I was like, what? So yeah, maybe that's not true that it was 0 seconds. It was more 50-50.
Now, my immediate reaction was, okay, Cole Machin, send in Pogacar. Imagine.
What time does he start on? Substitute McNulty out. He starts on 4 minutes. Can he win GC?
And ironically, with 4 minutes, it's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible at all. Probably would have won.
Either way, quickly before we get into the stage, substitutions in cycling, you want to see it at some point in the future or not? I'm on the no side.
No, it just benefits the rich teams.
I think that's true, but also it takes away the whole factor of stage race endurance and preserving certain riders throughout a week for specific stages, etc. So it takes away an element from racing and from cycling itself. So just that alone is a reason for it to not happen to me. And yes, your riders can crash out, they can abandon, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, that's part of the sport and you got to live with that. And substitutions, I don't ever want to see that in this sport. That's just my personal opinion. Now, going into the race of today, as expected, there was one man very vibrant at the start of today's stage, because we went through it yesterday. Mess Pedersen has the green jersey, but his points advantage on Matteo Jorgensen is actually not too substantial. There's 2 points in this stage where you can get intermediate sprint points or green jersey points. 1 point is the intermediate sprint, which is on the second last climb, so the smaller Col d'Ez. And at the top, you can get 10, 6, and 4 points for the first 3 riders. And then at the finish line, it's 15 points for the winner, I think, and then a couple of points for the rest of the riders in the top 10. So at the end of the day, Pedersen's goal was simple. He needs to get to the intermediate sprint, get first, and hoping that Jorgensen does not get points at that intermediate sprint, because then he is secure when it comes to the green jersey. And we see that the second the race starts. Well, we don't see that because there's no coverage at the start of the stage. By the way,
every year.
Go ahead, tell me. How annoyed are you?
Every year we only get like 2 climbs, 3 climbs of this stage broadcast. I don't understand why there's not more broadcast, and yeah, it's very frustrating. I don't need to see the whole stage, but maybe the last I don't know, 80Ks would have been
Yeah.
even.
I
Yeah,
would like to see the whole
the
stage.
last
here.
80Ks, you see the Col de la Porte. You see all the climbs.
Yeah, but I like the breakaway formation of the last stage of Paris-Nice, and also the last stage of the Dauphiné also comes to mind. Those two stages, in those two stage races, I want to see the full stage of. Breakaway formation matters. And therefore, I want to see it, especially when we know there's incentive for certain riders to do certain things in breakaway formation. For example, we see Pedersen attacking, we see McNulty dropping and abandoning. I don't know what's happening for my couch. Like, he could be sick, which is apparently what is the case. So that's unfortunate for the race, because then UAE only has Almeida to play with in this stage. So that is a major factor on their team throughout the stage. There are also some rumors that Almeida's also a little bit sick, but I've seen no confirmation of that yet. So we can't really see that as a fact yet. But like I said it, Pedersen tries to attack, a group of 13 forms, but a Pantra in it, O'Connor in it. Guys are on 4 to 7 minutes in GC, those two. Don Hola as a tug buddy for Pedersen. Fantastic group. Alaphilippe in there, potential satellite rider for Storer in there. Milanese, potential satellite rider for the likes of... is it Dromo Romeo this time? Romo's in this race, right?
Castrillo and Romeo.
Fuck. The E. Just the E. Like...
It's also like Pellizzari, Piganzoli, Pinarello.
Anyway, that group eventually gets caught again. We see the next group trying to form. Go ahead.
Engelhardt, Vandal, and who's the other one?
I don't know who you're trying to point towards.
There's 3 MISC 65 kilo Northern Europeans across Bora and Jayco. I always get them confused.
Do you consider Lipovitz in that or not? He's not a MISC.
No, he's not. He's in the white jersey. He's second in Paris-Nice. Not miscellaneous.
Anyway, second group that forms: Narvaez, Miss Pedersen, Sobrero, potential satellite rider for Lipovitz up the road, Steinhauser, Hagen, and so forth. But that group gets caught again. Pedersen eventually ends up riding alone at the front on the Côte de la Porte, and this gap goes from 12 seconds for a long time suddenly to like a minute 20 over the top of Côte de la Porte. So the main big climb at the start there. But are you surprised to see Lenny Martinez dropping on that first climb of today?
No, because I feel like the cold has gotten to him. I just feel like the week has gotten to him, and it's really a battle of attrition, and he's at a GC. And yeah, I wasn't that surprised.
We see Ineos controlling and pacing towards the next climb, the Côte de Paix. What was their motive, in your opinion?
Well, initially, yeah, we see basically on PCS and the race live tracker that Jorgensen's completely isolated. Visma have got no domestiques with him. It's the top of Col de la Porte. We've got 3 or 4 climbs to go. 3 really. And they got Foss, Sheffield, and Aaronsman all up in GC. And you would normally attack in reverse order. So the worst place GC rider jumps first, etc., etc. And it looked then when coverage started, Pedersen attacked on the downhill off Col de la Porte. No one could follow. It looked then, well, it didn't just look, it was the case. Ineos were just controlling the race. So it wasn't panic stations yet for Jorgensen going into the Côte de Paix. There was Josh Tarling on the front. He paced the whole downhill. No one could attack. Pedersen was kept on a leash of 50 seconds or so. And then, yeah, the race situation was kind of closed, except for McNulty being out. But the reason, but Tarling pacing as well, no Visma domestiques were coming back, not even in the heli shots where you saw up the hairpins. It was going to be a long afternoon for Matteo Jorgensen if he has a mechanical, if he has a hunger issue, if he just wants to get a gel from a teammate, if he needs to change bike, if he crashes. Also because the cars were barraged for a long time. So the keen cars were not there because there were so many riders in between.
For the people that don't know, barraging is basically when there's so many groups behind that the cars can't really move up safely in an orderly fashion fast enough for Jorgensen to have a team car just behind the group. That's kind of the idea behind barraging. It's more complicated than that, but that's a simplified version there. But like you say, we're moving towards Côte de Paix. And on Côte de Paix, that's kind of the climb in the last couple of years where we've seen GC action. And I actually really like this climb for this race. Now, we see some GC action, But it starts with Ineos controlling and pacing on Côte d'Épée, but not a deadly tempo. A tempo that does drop some riders, like Schachmann, for example, but on the other hand, still allows for attacks to happen. And we do see that, and we see Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe being very vibrant in attacking on this climb. Vlasov is the first one, together with O'Connor. Eventually, that gets neutralized. We see Lipovic attacking behind, and that kind of catches whatever's left of that move of Vlasov and O'Connor, and Sheffield's in the wheel of Lipovic, Jorgensen, Champoussin, and Tejada. And it's really those 5 riders that look the strongest on this climb right now. And, well, there's a bit of a gap towards Arensman, towards Almeida, but they kind of come back again. So Lipovic tries again. Same riders again start following. Sheffield, Jorgensen, Champoussin, and Tejada. But the gap is closed again. Then we see Vlasov being the next one to roll that attack. That gets closed because it seemed like Arensman was kind of starting to pace just to control in that group. But we got to talk about Ineos here and their strategy at this point in the race, because they've got, first of all, Arensman. They've got Voss kind of dangling in the group as well. And next to that, Magnus, Sheffield too. There is an attack that follows. Gall attacking, Vlasov following. And Ineos kind of turns into just a controlling, pacing team at that point in the race. Were you surprised?
I was a little bit. I was like, and then I thought, oh, they're worried about Arensman on the steep climbs. He's a long climbing guy. They want a closed defensive race where they have numerical control. No one can do anything. They ride a set tempo and they defend Arensman's third on GC. That's what it looked like to me, because Jorgensen was getting a free ride. Like, he even, when there was the attack phase starting with Vlasov ahead, basically Sheffield was... Well, no, Sheffield wasn't riding for Arensman, but then Jorgensen just got to wait. Voss returns, Voss controls Tejada, and he has no problems on Côte d'Épée. He only has to control one rider. If it's 1v1, he has no problem uphill. That's okay. And Lipovic, I feel like Lipovic went early, personally. It's too far. I would have probably let Vlasov go ahead, and then the only way he wins this race is if he drops Jorgensen on the top of the last climb with Vlasov ahead. And he went on the third last climb. So I think he went early. Credits to him for trying, but actually it backfired. But he still didn't full crack.
But I don't want to complain about it, because I do love seeing Paris Stage 8 opening up on the Côte d'Épée.
It's very open, yeah.
Now, I said it already. Colin Vlasov went off the front, and Ineos was kind of controlling behind. We got to keep remembering, Pedersen is still off the front right now. He had about, let's say, half a minute throughout the climb, and it got lower and lower towards like 15 seconds. Then Vlas and Gall end up joining Pedersen on top of Côte d'Épée, just before the top. Pedersen holds the wheel to the top, and they increase their gap again to 30 seconds. And we visibly hear Pedersen, audibly here technically, we audibly hear Pedersen say to Felix Gall, I just need the points. So it's very clear that Pedersen's only reason here is to get to the next small climb, which is Col d'Aise after Côte d'Épée. He's over Côte d'Épée. His race is almost, his finish line is Col d'Aise. That's his first finish line. The rest is kind of bonus. And we see that behavior because Pedersen does a lot of the pacing as well in that front group to keep that group going. So that is that. But then we see a switch in the strategy of Ineos, because one of them decides to attack, no?
It didn't even look like a plan. Voss didn't know it was happening. Sheffield scoots across. Jorgensen hesitates. He thinks maybe Sheffield's about to start sort of relaying with Voss, and Voss will take his wheel. Doesn't take Sheffield's wheel, and then Sheffield's gone. And it's a false flat, or maybe 3-4%. It's a pedaling descent. You get a huge, basically, to go fast and catch someone, you have to ride absolutely all out. And the flip side is someone in your wheel is freewheeling almost. That's the sort of descent it is. So it's a huge advantage to be in the wheel. It's a huge disadvantage if you're isolated and you're having to control. And this was a very dangerous moment in the race for Jorgensen and Benji, because we've still got to the finish. We've still got a long way to the bottom of Col d'Aise, where he might want to solve it. And no one's blinking. No one, except Movistar a little bit. Movistar were attacking, not pacing. They don't want to just control it for Jorgensen. Jorgensen's got this is where you need a Wilco Kelderman to solve it for you, or just keep a tempo, keep Sheffield at 30 seconds.
But I'll be honest, I was never truly scared for Jorgensen because of the fact that Sheffield is 254 behind in GC before the stage. So he's got space to play with. Even if it becomes 1 minute and a half, I still trust Jorgensen to be able to control that gap on Col d'Ez itself. And then afterwards, it's not that far to the finish line. Quatre Chemins, I mean, the final climb. Like, it felt manageable. So I still felt like Jorgensen was, despite being isolated, despite multiple riders trying to attack in that same descent where Jorgensen then tries to control, like the Movistar riders, Almeida trying it, then Vos actually closing it for Jorgensen. But about that for a second, that to me seemed like Ineos was thinking, okay, Sheffield's trying to bridge to the front. That is stage win, potentially moving up on GC. But in this group, we've got Arensman still in the group, who's P3 in GC. Vos closing an Almeida move while Jorgensen is in the group. To me, feels like they're balancing the stage plus GC chances of Sheffield with trying to let no one else get up the road for Arensman. Does that make sense?
And if Almeida gets 10 seconds up the road, then Sobrero is back in the group. Sobrero is going to pace to defend Lipovic's GC position from Almeida. Jorgensen gets a free ride. The race continues. So they just want to close Almeida. But yeah, the only way Jorgensen loses this race overall is if he panics and overreacts in this moment. Is if you go to the front and start trying to solve Sheffield yourself on a false flight downhill with Lipovic getting a free ride in your wheel. That was and he didn't. It seemed like he went to the front.
A little bit, but he knew what he was doing.
When it was a steeper section on the descent where he could freewheel or just keep it moving, it seemed he went to the front, but otherwise he would let the guys attack and then follow. But still, not a nice situation. It could get worse if counter moves go ahead and you really start to get isolated. We saw Remco in the Basque Country 2021 or 2022 in a similar situation. He got rolled by Martinez and some other GC guys. So you don't want to be isolated here. We get to Col d'Ez. Pedersen's managed to hang on. He's also managed to work with Vlasov and Sheffield.
Gal.
They get... Does Sheffield start the climb behind them?
They come together on the climb, I would say.
Okay.
But Gal's also there. Just wanted to add that. But you're right. They're on that climb. But did you believe Pedersen would be able to hold on a 3.8 kilometer, 8% climb?
No, it's 1.6K, it's 9%.
Really? Okay, my bad. Misread.
Well, I still didn't because Sheffield didn't get the memo. Sheffield wants to ride Sheffield's pace, and Pedersen was kind of talking to him, and then they get to the last corner, and Pedersen has to sprint Sheffield for the bonus points on the top of Col d'Ez. Behind, we see Alaphilippe's taking control for Tudor. That's because Sheffield started the stage only 25 seconds behind Stora's fourth on GC. So again, Jorgensen didn't have to overreact. Eventually, always in cycling, some team will come and pace. And in the end, it was Alaphilippe. What was surprising, though, was then 300 meters into Col d'Ez, Jorgensen launches. I think he might have seen Lipovic was out of position. It was Sobrero and Arensman on his wheel, or Vos, and Lipovic was wheel 6. And Jorgensen's able to basically then get a gap. He then sees he's got a bit of a gap 3 wheels behind, and then he knows he can shake Sobrero off the wheel on 9%, and he goes all out here. It's early, but Lipovic also has to do the same reaction. So if Vlasov, for example, if Lipovic has 3 teammates who can pace him for the rest of the stage, this is a bad move from Jorgensen. But it becomes mano-a-mano. Jorgensen's bridging across to the group of Sheffield ahead, controlling that on a steep climb. Lipovic is having to work behind Jorgensen. And did you think Jorgensen was going to get across to Sheffield on Col d'Ez?
I'm not on Col d'Ez necessarily, but on Quatre Chemins it's possible. You know, the last climb of the day, it's very much a possibility. And I don't know. I would kind of if you think about the two riders, fresh climbing, I would say yes. But Jorgensen's kind of been isolated all day and he has to close a little bit of gaps every now and then throughout the stage as well. He has to respond to the likes of Lipovic making a move on Côte d'Épée 3 times. And in doing so, that changed a little bit because Sheffield doesn't necessarily need to do that. And Sheffield he didn't have a passive race for most of the day, but up to that point of his attack, he didn't necessarily have to mark specific riders. So that's my valid excuse in my head to why Jorgensen might not be able to get to Sheffield on that final climb. But there was a certain point in this race, I don't remember which climb it was, where I think it was Sobrero, a Bora rider, rides into a curb and falls over. Which climb was that and which rider?
It was Sobrero into the Quatre Chemins, sharp right-hander. I think he's like fully cooked, and he just hits the curb, rides the curb, unclipped, but then still falls over anyway.
That was something, but the race situation is now as followed, right? Sheffield's at the front. Pedersen got over that Col-d'Aise climb. Pedersen drops from Sheffield on the next climb, of course, on Quatre Chemins. But when it comes to Gal and Vlasov, I felt like there was a moment where Vlasov was seemingly waiting and then not waiting on Lipovic. And it's interesting because like he's already in Group 2 because Sheffield and Pedersen were up the road when that was happening. And behind, Jorgensen has now caught up with Vlasov and Gal. So I don't see Vlasov winning the stage from this point in that scenario anymore. So I kind of see Vlasov waiting for Lipovic as the most valid strategy from this point, no?
I think they didn't really know what to do, and in the end, Vlasov gets dropped basically on Quatre Chemins, and then he's helping on a 15% section, doesn't really move the needle too much. And then we see the stage win. I think basically, even if Jorgensen quote-unquote cracks, he starts Quatre Chemins with a minute buffer on a 4K climb to Lipovic. He's going to make it over the top ahead, or at least with them. And Lipovic also looked like he was cooked. And then, but we see, Benji, that Sheffield begins to take the gap out to Jorgensen. It goes from 13 seconds to 17. Definitely the Pedersen being able to work with him, because Felix Gall, all due respect, is a hindrance rather than a help on descents. Whereas Pedersen was relaying with Sheffield. And Jorgensen, it looks like it becomes a stalemate. He goes slower in the first half of the climb. He then goes quicker in the second half of the climb. And then at the end, the gap's still about 20 seconds. And Sheffield's not slowing down. And with the equal strength, Sheffield knows the roads too. I actually never thought Sheffield was going to get caught by Jorgensen, because Jorgensen was maybe slowing down rather than speeding up.
And it was odd because in the descent of Quatre Chemins, yes, the time gap went up to like 20 plus seconds, but then it went down to 12 seconds, which that was the only moment where I thought, okay, is Jorgensen actually like shredding this descent much faster? Obviously, Gall is definitely always getting dropped by Jorgensen in this descent. That's a fact. So I can't use that for my knowledge of like, okay, he's flying and therefore might catch Sheffield, but it looks like the gap went up after the 12 seconds again. So in the end, in the last 1.5 kilometers, we see Sheffield celebrating with like 1.3 kilometers to go. Was maybe a little bit early.
Premature, because like Jorgensen, so it looked like Jorgensen had closed 5 seconds in the last K.
Yeah. But hey, like the massive thing for me is that the second Sheffield was off the front. I also kind of wanted Ineos to get something out of this Paris after the way they've ridden so aggressively this entire week. So it's very nice to see Sheffield then being in a position where he could win the stage, and he ends up doing so. Magnus Sheffield wins stage 8 of Paris, and Voss has tried to go in and move multiple times, tried to bridge to breakaway riders in a couple of stages. They literally tried multiple stages to get a situation like this working, and it works on the final day. And I think that's fantastic to see, and I hope it incentivizes more teams to take up aggressive riding like Ineos in this race, you know?
They deserved it. They won the team's classification. They tried to win a stage every day, and they win. They deserve to win the stage. They get a podium on GC. They move Sheffield up to 4th on GC. They also finished with Voss top 10 on GC. So they got the race they wanted, maybe more in the TTT, but still, a huge race from Ineos. Probably their best 1 week stage race as a team. I can remember them riding for 2 years.
Yeah. Bernal in that one Catalonia was good at podium, nothing, but not really as a team. Like Tirreno was solid as a team, but we'll get into that later. But Paris was more impressive.
Paris, I agree, as a team was more impressive. Anyway, Jorgensen finishes second on the stage. To be honest, with the lack of team support in the final 2 hours of this stage, it would have been a miracle to win it. So I think he would have been... but that's also a cause for concern, but he'll still be happy that in the end, he was the strongest GC rider across the 8 days.
About that team performance around Visma, obviously, Vingegaard was out. I think Hagenes was also out going into this stage. We have leftovers going in. What, sorry?
Hagenes started.
Oh, Hagenes DNF'd in the stage. Okay. Now, outside of that, we've got Zangle, Lemon, Campenaerts, Affini. I'm sorry, but Affini I can't expect to do much here. Zangle neither. Maybe I expected a little more by a Bart Lemon on this stage, but maybe a Campenaerts a little bit more. But it's also, this is not the team. Benji. What, sorry?
There's a group of 30 over the top of Col Laporte. Niels Pollitt was in the group.
Pollitt's been climbing very well in the last year, and to me, it's not a surprise that Campenaerts and Lemon might not be in that group of 30. But I would rather see Lemon be in that group. And they've had to control the brake formation, which we didn't see off camera. Like maybe they were controlling brake formation, which Niels Pollitt certainly doesn't have to do. That costs energy, but still. But
Ineos had numbers.
Is it me, or have we over the last 2 months now felt like the race of Algarve, for example, and this race, that Visma, where is Kelderman? I don't remember seeing him in races this year.
The mountain.
He's on the mount. Okay. We're missing the medium mountain domestiques, the mountain domestiques right now for these teams. And maybe Vingegaard and Jorgensen as a duo was a solution to that. But then still, there was something in between that I'm missing. And Algarve felt the same, you know?
It should be Lemon.
Gotta get them off the mountain.
Gotta get them off the mountain. But yeah, would Vingegaard have controlled Sheffield's downhill attack? I mean, you can at least keep a tempo going, but still, you're right. No, Kelderman's better for that.
He could have controlled the group in, if he was if either of them were second in GC, whatever the situation is going into this, the second in GC is probably going to be the one ending up falling into a domestique role in that long descent towards the Col d'Aes climb, for example. The one where Jorgensen kind of had to half be at the front of the group, half not be at the front of the group, and let the other team solve it. Those kind of scenarios, you'd like to have a second rider there. And yeah, I'm not surprised that Bart Lemon wouldn't be there after Côte de Pay.
After Côte de Pay, sure, but Col de Laporte, I don't know. Should be there. Then again, Benji, the team construction for Paris-Nice is tricky because you want to put in Affini, Hagenes, because you gained how much on Ineos in the TTT,
echelons,
and then you gain 2 minutes on Almeida and co in the echelons. So it's they're not there, and Jorgensen solves it today, but they did help you gain. So it's a really tricky race to put together. Ideally, you want Josh Tarling, who also is there in the echelons and the TTT and gets over Col de Laporte. Yeah. Beautiful.
Or Cataneo.
Cataneo,
that kind of rider.
Exactly. GC Jorgensen wins GC for the second year in a row at his home race, a minute 15 ahead of Lipovic. Aronsman third on 158. That's got to be his best World Tour 1 week result in a long time. Probably his best ever, I'd say. It's better than Bologna second. Sheffield moved into fourth on 217. Storer fifth is a great result for him. 303. Almeida sixth, drops down. Champersin seventh. Tejada eighth. Voss ninth. Van Wilder 10th. Also, should be noted, it's Magnus Sheffield's first ever World Tour level win, because Brabants he won was a dot pro race. So, anything else from GC, Benji? I mean, Tejada and Champersin, 275 UCI points. Pretty good for Astana.
That was really impressive. Overall, when it comes to my feeling of Paris-Nice, Visma came to this race with 2 GC riders. One of them crashed out, so the redundant GC rider actually ended up being very useful at the end of the week. But Jorgensen ends up winning, so that team did what they had to do in this race. They came for the victory, and they got the victory. Almeida, disappointing. Great stage victory. Let's not forget about that. But at the end of the week, Almeida still has not won a GC in his entire career, has he?
Almeida?
Yeah.
Didn't he win Poland?
Oh yeah, Poland. I'm sorry. A prominent 1 week GC race, I mean. I think
he's
Poland.
never won on UAE. He's never won one GC in anything.
That's crazy. I'm sorry. When when it comes to a rider like Joao Almeida, he's just got so many weaknesses too. Is it pressure, or is it weaknesses of positioning, team positioning issues in this race specifically? The time trial being dog-shit by the entire team too?
I think he could have won Tirreno, but then I say that, but he also lost Valencia. And this is, so Paris is not the race for him. Bad
Mountain
weather
echelons in Tirreno.
Yeah, but at least I think you would have been okay.
I'm not sure about that, actually.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Like, I want to see him succeed. He's now under a user in the hierarchy of the team, for sure.
For sure.
And we see that already by the schedules of the year, to the point that he's kind of in that super domestique Tour de France role where he might be able to top 5 the race himself. That's the role I see for him right now. Same when it comes to the Vuelta, if Pogacar also goes to it, which I kind of expect. There's not many races where Almeida is like, in 1 week race, he gets the opportunity, but even in Catalonia, for example, they're sending a user, not Almeida and a user. So then again, in 2022, that Doe didn't exactly pull it off, but
let them both go.
Yeah, let them fight. Other teams. Lipovic, very impressive.
Lipovic's very
or
good.
Would you say today hit the limit?
I think he was fine. He was fine today. He gave it a crack, and it's always gonna cost you. Aronsman countered him at the end, and he was able to stay with him. So, if Champoussin Tejada are riding more passively and you're having to attack 3 climbs out, it's going to cost you. So, and then he didn't crack either. I think he really stalled at the end of Col d'Ez. He really stalled, but then I think everyone else was on the limit too. And he gave up. Obviously, he had to give up on Jorgensen up the road. Astana, like Champoussin 5th today.
Oh.
I mean, it's kind of crazy what's going on, honestly. Like, Champoussin, Tejada, Scaroni, like top 10 climbers in the world.
All of them are overperforming significantly compared to last year.
Mate,
the entire team made a step up.
600 UCI points. He's got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Patrick
Champoussin has 11 top 10s in 20 race days. That guy on Arkea
had a terrible season last year.
Yeah, like couldn't top 10 Andorran supermarket championships. So, they're flying. We'll see what race he does next. But yeah, he and what's Tejada done? And
Tejada's been strong all year as well. Top 10
he even top 10 UAE. Top 10 UAE.
But for Tejada, I'm not shocked by this by Tejada.
No, he's always been good in Paris-Nice.
Yeah, for Champoussin, he's just suddenly back after doing nothing for a couple of years at Arkea.
Fortunato
anyway,
top 10 on the mountaintop finish yesterday as well. So Fortunato way better, especially he attacked in Ardèche. He dropped Ayuso for a bit. So that's all from Paris-Nice. It was a classic Paris-Nice, I would say, a war of attrition. You needed to be a complete GC rider. You needed to survive the cold to get to the sun. And I would say it's definitely an indication of how Ineos will continue to ride. On to Tirreno, Benji.
One last thing. Joshua Tarling. What monster is he becoming, my man? Like, he's becoming super versatile. He had a bit of a sprint against Pedersen the other day. Paris-Roubaix, I've always had him as high hopes as doing really well suddenly at Paris-Roubaix. So the cobbles is no problem. I don't know what his limits are in the grand scheme of things in a couple of years. And I can't wait to figure it out, just in general,
I think he's going to be just a beast. Like, he can do everything. I can't wait to see. And the other temptation is, because he's such a useful domestique, to put him in, say, the Tour as an ultimate domestique, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'd say the Giro with the TTs might suit him better if Ganna's doing the Tour de France. I don't know what his schedule is. Certainly he'll do Roubaix out of the Classics. So I don't know if there's further ones later. But yeah, Ineos are looking good. They're looking good. Don't know if they're all the way back, but they've certainly got their riders performing well.
Yeah.
Tirreno-Adriatico, we had a sprint stage again from Porto Potenza Picena to San Benedetto del Tronto, 147 Ks. This is supposed to be borderline ceremonial. You let Trek and Co control it. Pippo Ganna started the day 2 seconds, I think, behind Tiberi, or 1 second behind Tiberi
Yes.
on GC.
2 seconds, and
Okay.
because of the hundredths of a second in the time trial, Ganna's technically ahead if they're on equal time. As context. Go ahead.
So you knew that Ineos wanted to move him up into second. It was a matter of just putting the bonus seconds at the intermediate in play because he's going to beat Tiberi in a flat sprint. We know that. But we get to the main climb of the day, which is 8.5 Ks, 5%, although it's a bit irregular. There's actually there's 2 sections of 7% in it. And Ineos, and there's also a hard climb, 2K, 7% before that. There's a breakaway up the road of Mathieu van der Poel and Vokala, who's on 130 on GC, Bjorn Kurt, Tarozzi from Bardiani. Van der Poel's just there for training. We know that. He knows that. He's probably told everyone that. He is not going to contest the sprint. He knows he's not going to stay away from Trek and Visma and Jayco pacing for the sprinters. He's just training for San Remo next weekend. Vokala in there is kind of annoying for them because he's close on GC. That's why I thought Ineos were controlling. So Ineos start drilling this climb. Groenewegen dropped early. Bennett dropped. We see Coy gapped, coming back with the Volta around him. Manier dropped as well for Quick-Step. De Plus and Ineos have Milan sidle up to them, and he's like, slow down, because he's going to drop Edward Turns and his lead out. He's like, what are you doing? Like, we're going to control the stage. They're like, too bad. And they get to Van der Poel. They get to Vokala. No, first they get to Vokala, straight past him. I was like, it's not for GC. Get to Van der Poel, straight past him. Still smashing. I was like,
yeah,
okay. We don't need to do this just to put the bonies in play. What do you reckon they were up to?
Like, I think they were trying to drop sprinters. That's the logical thought when I see that happening. But what is the end goal is the real question. Because, yes, the bonus second sprint is coming. Who's going to be sprinting at the intermediate sprint? I don't think Olaf Koy cares about the intermediate sprint. I don't think Groenewegen was going to sprint for the intermediate sprint. Manier, I don't think was going to sprint for the intermediate sprint. So I don't know who they're trying to drop that would have sprinted at the intermediate sprint, you know?
Me either. Like, the sprinters don't care. Their sprinters want to conserve their legs for the stage win. Maybe Milan cares about the Ciclamino, but he's in the peloton. So I didn't really understand it. I almost thought it made it possible that there could be counters. Maybe Benji, that could, like, if they really thin it out, then you could have you could go for the sprint at the finish or something. But in the end, it all comes back together on the descent. Manier crashes coming back. He kind of didn't need to panic. Coy came back a bit quicker. And we see then Brandon Rivera pacing on the flat. Just one Ineos guy. And so Jayco had a full train for Groenewegen. DSM were pacing for, don't know, Lund Anderson, maybe.
Did you speak about the actual intermediate sprint outcome?
But this was before the intermediate.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
The sprint, yeah, so all the sprinters that got dropped, Bennett and Co, all came back before the intermediate. And then we get to the intermediate. We see Ganna's been talking to Johnny Milan. And Milan goes to the front very early in the sprint. Benji, we've got a correction on the...
Correct.
Ganna had to take a delta of 2 positions in the intermediate to Tiberi, right? He had to come second or first, and Tiberi had to come third or worse.
Yes, depending on the position that Ganna's in.
Yep.
But to be clear, Ganna had to be 2 positions ahead of Tiberi to get it here. And, like you say, Milan and Ganna were speaking to each other before the intermediate sprint. I thought, okay, they're just chatting. Turns out it wasn't just chatting, because in the run-up towards the intermediate sprint, we see Jonathan Milan doing a sprint that looks too early, but also not full. And then we see him constantly looking behind as he's moving up towards that sprint as well, as if he's waiting for someone to be on his wheel until Ganna's on the wheel before he launches that sprint. So there's something more going on here. And then Milan kind of stops halfway through his sprint, lets Ganna come past, and then starts sprinting to get second behind Ganna. Very clearly, we see Milan leading out Ghana at this intermediate sprint, right? While the Bahrain boys were trying to get Tiberi into the third position, which in the end results in Ghana taking 2 positions on Tiberi, securing a spot in front of Tiberi in GC. So Ghana moves up 1 spot in GC to second, while Tiberi drops to third after this intermediate sprint. But I immediately thought, okay, firstly, as a spectator, I enjoy seeing shit like this in a cycling race. But secondly, is this even legal to begin with?
Well, yeah, because Milan's going for the Ciclamino points, but he doesn't want to do a full sprint before the finish. So he's sort of helping himself.
That's the potential excuse. Now, Luc Grefte, our boy, our producer, brought up the exact rule set for this sprint as well, and I'm trying to look for it as I speak. And it says 1.2.081 in the rules, riders shall sportingly defend their own chances. Any collusion or behavior likely to falsify or go against the interest of the competition shall be forbidden. Now, that's a very serious rule, as in sportingly defend their own chances. That's very much up to interpretation. My view of this was, if Milan does a lead out at his intermediate sprint for Ghana, I now need to see Ghana do a lead out for Milan at the end of the race to make it sportingly defending their chances, because then they're both helping each other with what they're doing. To me, that was how I interpreted it. But Luke also pointed out that there's a next step here. What if teams start doing it instead of riders?
Yeah. I mean, you can't force people to sprint all out to intermediate sprint points. So, yeah, it's just an unenforceable rule. And I also see it as beneficial to Milan.
Okay.
Like, what about Geraint Thomas leading out Cavendish in the Giro last year?
I think we brought this up at that point, but at the end of the day, we both enjoyed it too much for actually caring about the rule.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, like...
Now, if 2 teams start doing it as a team, then it's to the extreme, and then it becomes a problem. But in this case, I don't have an issue with it.
Well, yeah. I think it's... What I don't understand, why is Ghana only friends with Milan, not Tiberi? Is it because they were on the track team together? Because
Yes.
like Italian on Italian violence. And listen, Tiberi, Milan didn't do his job properly. He didn't continue to the line. Tiberi nearly beat him with the throw and nearly kept second. And so that was the crazy thing, is that despite all that, Tiberi nearly holds on to second because he nearly beats Milan in the intermediate because he slowed down so quickly. Anyway, Ben Healy tries to counterattack after the intermediate. Doesn't go anywhere. UNOX were there. Gebrez, Kabir, and Kreitzweig go on the front for Trek and Visma. Right on the front. It's a wet, sort of technical circuit. No attacks allowed. And we're going to have a sprint, and that's what we have. We see Trek. They don't have Consoni, and we're worried that they're going to not be able to... They'll be on the front maybe too early. Dylan Van Baarle brings up McClay on the right-hand side. Coy loses them. Van Baarle stops. This is like 2.5 Ks to go. Coy never gets back to McClay. They never find each other again. Trek get organised. They bring up Milan. Varenskold's on the wheel of Milan. And if there was another lead out here, Benji, Trek were in trouble. Because at 500, they stall completely. I don't know if it was Turns or Sturven. Turns, I think. Turns does a fantastic job not going too early, staying patient, not panicking. And they do get lucky a lead out doesn't come and wave over them. And yeah, does a lead out. Milan's able to sprint without getting boxed in, and Milan wins. Varenskold drops his chain. Bennett does come fast on the outside. Yes. Sam Bennett is in good shape. He's going to win, I think, a World Tour race this year. But he's not able to win here with Milan still not the ideal lead out, but also as good as one could hope for without Consoni. Beats Bennett. Coy 30, we disappointed. He got boxed badly. Stewart 4th, Penway 5th, Lenardi 6th, Zylard 7th, Tesfazion 8th, Van Uden 9th, Venturini 10th. In terms of GC, Ayuso, UAE had no problems today. It was all controlled by the sprint teams. Probably they were happy that everyone was tired out a little bit on the climb. He wins GC. He is, maybe his second World Tour level GC victory after Basque Country last year. Ghana second on 35 seconds. Tiberi third on 36 seconds. G fourth on 42 seconds. Then Hindley, Pidcock, Landa de la Cruz, Bilbao, Catania rounding out the top 10.
2 things. Ghana ended up actually helping Little Trek going into the final lead out. So that detail I did want to mention because it kind of ends the story of Ghana and Milan working together a little bit on today's stage. That was very clear that they both helped each other at different points in the race. Now, when it comes to the final sprint, turns after his lead out, he drops through the middle of the group, which that's fine. After your lead out, dropping back, that is fine. But in doing so, he stops pedaling, which makes him decelerate so fast that the speed differential between Teuns dropping through the group and the other sprinters around him becomes quite dangerous. Because all these other sprinters behind Teuns suddenly have to do a last-minute swerve to the right or to the left to avoid Teuns, who's dropping very fast through the group. And as a consequence, we see I think a Picnic Postinel rider ending up swerving to the right. Manier kind of gets shocked or hit by it, and he doesn't immediately crash, but while trying to correct back, then he ends up crashing. So to me, Manier crashing in this sprint is an indirect consequence of Edouard Teuns decelerating by stopping his pedaling after finishing his lead out. And I think that's a mistake. Now, in the rules, we've spoken about that exact rule where, for example, if you decelerate during a sprint and endanger others, you can get a yellow card because of celebrating, stuff like that, or taking your hand off the handlebars. Now, I'm not saying Edouard Teuns should get a yellow card for this, but I think within the sport of cycling, it needs to be campaigned more towards leadouts that they should not stop pedaling when they stop their lead out, because it has caused so many crashes in the last years.
Yeah, we've seen it before. We saw it in the Tour de France last year. I think in a big crash. So, yeah, that can't happen. Ayuso Benji looking good for the Giro. You know, he's won 4 races in 10 race days. Drome, La Guelia, stage here, GC. He goes to Catalunya. I think a win there, to be honest. So I think Ayuso is making the step. To me, it looks like he's making the step. And I think if Adam Richard was able to deliver him yesterday for a bit longer, he wins by a bigger margin too.
When did we evolve from Yates to Adam Richard? What was the capitulating event that did that?
It's an Italian race, so they always put Adam Richard Yates in the little graphic when they show him.
Not Ricardo? Is it Italian or is it Spanish?
No. They say Simon Philip Yates, Adam Richard Yates. They always put it on the graphic.
Okay, now, about that for a second. At what point do we put Juan Ayuso next to Roglic as favorite for the Giro? What does he need to do to be on that spot? Or is that hard because Roglic has the baggage of so many Grand Tour victories?
To me, it's today. Because the UAE team is going to be obscene. It's actually too much. In fact, it's unbalanced. Like, Del Toro, Ayuso. Del Toro's doing Giro, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Del Toro, Ayuso, Maika, because he got booted off the Tour de France. Vine, I think. And McNulty. Okay, McNulty doesn't count. He's hunting stages. But still, that mountain support is ridiculous. And then you probably have an Oliveira brother in there and a Steker Langen. Crazy team. And his level's really good. And he's good in the shit weather and the cold. His weakness is the heat.
And he crashes less?
Crashes less. Excellent descender. Complete bike rider, actually. A good sprint. So I don't know what team's going with Roglic. Maybe Hindley?
Maybe. I don't know. Like,
I mean, how many times have we counted out Roglic?
Have we counted him out fully before?
No, but...
Vuelta, I haven't. Tour de France, I have last year for the victory, yeah? But I think that was rightful.
He has as well. That's why he's doing the Giro.
Fair. I don't count Roglic out for the Giro, to be clear.
No.
But to me, Ayuso's on the same spot now.
To me, I agree. With the team strength, the UAE team, you know it's going to be stacked.
But does it still worry you, despite what he's shown this year, that Ayuso throughout the last 2 years has had moments of like, okay, I was expecting him to be good, and then he was absolutely nothing on this climb?
Yeah, I feel like that was on stage 5. I don't think he was that good on stage 5 here.
Okay.
Didn't move me. To be honest. I also think his biggest issue is probably fragility. He had like knee or tendon issues last year, was it? Or the year before that stopped his season. So I think his biggest issue is going to be actually avoiding injuries and training stability. Likewise with Jan Christen's issue is not his talent. The issue is going to be that he's going to crash every 10 race days and break something.
Like Sheffield.
Like Sheffield. Sheffield with crashes is what's derailed his results and stopped him building up in a linear fashion. So with Ayuso, yeah, looking good. He's just got to stay upright, stay healthy, and he will be a favourite for the Giro.
Yep. Anyway, that's good news. Now, there was a third race today. Trofeo Binda, women's race, World Tour race. One of the oldest big women races on the calendar. Like, the first thought when it comes to Trofeo Binda is always, if there have to be 5 races selected as monuments in women's cycling, OG women's cycling fans will always select Trofeo Binda. But people that come over now from men's cycling and explore women's cycling for the first time will be like, oh, Milano-San Remo's here, Paris-Roubaix here, Tour of Flanders here. It's just, those are the monuments, right? It's an interesting dynamic. But this race is kind of losing a bit of importance, and we see that in the amount of coverage we have for this race, because as a consequence of the Tirreno race, for example, in Italy, being covered by Rai, and then Trofeo Binda being covered as well, they only have like 45 minutes of coverage there. Now, internationally, it was more than that, fortunately. Now, and it was a good race. I'll be honest about that. Like, I followed the tickers for the first 75% of the race, and we had a large group up the road by 14 riders. Parkour-wise, before I get into that group, actually, what's the parkour like of this race?
It's got 2 hills in it that they do over and over again. One's shorter and steeper, the Casale, 800 meters, 7%. And the Orino, which is the last one they do, crest 9Ks from the finish, is 2.6Ks at 5%, quite regular, quite similar to what they'll do in the Poggio next week, actually, just a kilometer shorter, more or less. The descent's fast, like in the last part in particular, fast, and you don't have to brake if you're a confident descender. And we saw the descents played a really big role, actually, in this race, with some riders using them to attack. And like we said yesterday, most teams didn't want to sprint. Most teams, like Peterson, Vollering, Longo Borghini, they didn't want to sprint. They didn't want to go to the line with Elisa Balsamo. But unfortunately for them, they all cannibalized each other. 3 would go away. Mavi Garcia would bring Vos back. Van der Breggen went away and got up the road. FDJ brought her back. And then it even goes into the last lap like that.
And even early on in the race, like I said, 14 women group up the road, and Tynan's in there, Gasparini, Buisman, Eglantine Rayer, you've spoken about her a couple of times, Femke Gerritsen as well, so riders of FDJ Suez, SD Works, Van Empelov, of Visma Lease Bike, like, all the teams, while they do have Vos at Visma Lease Bike, most teams in this group are also teams that are like, okay, we don't have a sprinter, and as a consequence, despite actually Dijkenen also being in there with Balsam at the back, we see then AG Insurance pulling in the peloton according to the ticker, which is because they're just not in the race right now. So those teams also increase the chances of Balsamo then getting back to this group. And you said it, there were attacks, 25 kilometers to go. FDJ sets up Voring, she can't get a gap. Then Petersen goes, same, can't get a gap. Longo Borghini attacks, can't get a gap. Anna van der Breggen tries in a descent, and that was actually the most gapping attack of most of the final, actually, with 25 kilometers to go, and she gets a gap of 20-ish seconds, and eventually that gets closed by a massive attack by Longo Borghini with 15 kilometers to go, so on the exact same climb, but 10k later in the race. And that attack was super strong, but to me the most shocking part of the attack was not in her wheel, Voring. Petersen was there, but who was literally in the wheel, trying to follow the ELB attack and actually succeeding for most of it? Marianne Vos. And for the majority of this final, I was shocked by how good Vos was in reacting to these punching attacks. Better than Ferrand Prévot in this final, to the point that for MSR, Vos has made a statement to me today.
Yeah, Vos just come down from training, and I don't think she's even raced so far this year.
Was she on the mountain?
I think she must have been on the mountain. On a mountain somewhere. I don't know which one. Kopeck's still on the mountain. She's still on the mountain. Don't know which one either. But she's there somewhere. And the Vos kills herself here. Because she basically, and we've seen her do this in the Vuelta last year, maybe the Tour last year, I think, or Liège. We've seen this in Liège many, many years. She's one of the few, sometimes women you see in the peloton, she'll go to the point of full crack to hold that wheel because she knows she's just got to make it over the top, but it doesn't work here. She cracks, and it's actually Ferrand Prévot who has to solve it. a group goes up the road, but it's without SD Works. So a group of Peterson, Vollering, maybe even Vladarchik was in it. I thought I saw 2 UAEs. A group
Possibly.
of 5 go, and they just don't work well enough. They get caught at 500 meters to go as Ferron Prevost starts her lead out. Voss is a bit deep. She's boxed in. Balsamo's there. Kat Ferguson's there. And we see Balsamo's able to open her sprint up cleanly. Blanca Vash looked like she was coming back at her pretty well, or actually might have won the race, but it's Balsamo who wins the race for the 3rd time, 2nd year in a row, ahead of Vash. 3rd, Kat Ferguson, her first ever World Tour race, 18 years old. Finishes 3rd in the sprint after going too early, actually. She might have even done better than that. Voss 4th, Georgie 5th, Paternoster 6th. Which is pretty good shape from Paternoster, I'd say. Rook 7th, Peterson 8th, despite being ahead for a lot of the race. Trinket Colonel 9th, Kimberly Pienaar 10th.
2 things about the race that we haven't mentioned that I do want to highlight. But about 10K to go on that climb, we saw ELB attack violently, and I do want to mention one rider that was reacting and there. A Picnic Postinel rider, Cavalli, was able to follow in a group with ELB, Vos, Petersen, and Vollering. I think it was Cavalli there. And if it was Cavalli, I'm 90% sure, then that is a massive performance, in my opinion. And I can't wait to see whether she can get back to her old form at some point in her next couple of years. Because that was a shining spark, if that was indeed Cavalli reacting there. Now, after that climb, there was a small group with Vollering, Mavi Garcia, ELB, and Peters at a certain point. And they had a bit of a gap on the group behind it. It's that group also that SD Works also tried closing with Van der Breggen and Gerritsen, because they have Vash in the group behind in the final here. And am I weird in thinking that it's surprising that group is Vollering, Mavi Garcia, ELB, and Petersen? Longoborghini's been trying to attack multiple times in this race. Petersen tried to attack once, Vollering multiple times. Mavi Garcia, ELB, and Petersen did not want to take over from Vollering. And
yeah, I didn't get it either. Like, Vollering's not that quick. Like, she's quick, but the one
not like these riders.
She can be beaten in a flat sprint.
Yeah, and what are they going to do otherwise?
Jaco got Paternoster behind.
Fair.
And Smulders. And then Phoenix, I don't get it, because actually from that group, it's Petersen who still finishes 8th.
ELB?
ELB
Anyone?
The same. There's no UAE in the top 10.
Yeah. Anyway, regardless, great victory for Balsamo. The way she moved up on the barrier by the side of the group looked a bit scary, but honestly, super impressive. It's like she's not even sprinting all out the way she looks while she's sprinting. She's obviously doing so, but this was a dominant victory in that group, and you'd expect that if Balsamo's there, winning this race not for the first time. And it's nice to see that. It's nice to see Anna van der Breggen fall into a domestique role last minute for Vash in the group behind. It's nice to see Cavalli show up. Vollering looked strong throughout the race, just couldn't actually get the separation necessary. I can't wait to go to see MSR, because if this race, how do we see the climbs in this race versus the climbs in MSR in terms of gradient?
This race is harder.
Yeah.
This race is harder than Milan-San Remo. They do... let me have a look at the aggregate. Surely the aggregate Denevelle meters is higher here. So Binder here has 2450 meters elevation in 152 Ks. San Remo next week, half, 1300 in the same distance. This race is way harder.
I don't think Vollering can win MSR.
That's what I'm saying. It's looking like Voss, Ferguson,
Kopecky,
and Kopecky. You have to sprint. You have to be able to sprint, because
I like Ferguson pick.
She got that, for El Gato. Visma got the wolf, and then El Gato's at novice. I mean, she's generational talent. I've said it multiple times. Yeah. She's like Peter Sagan level. Yeah, crazy generational talent. So she's going to win big races this year. She's to me, Ferguson's already like, now listen, she wasn't responding to the same amount of attacks as Voss, right? Uphill. She was playing it a bit cooler behind, but she's already a superstar, an elite rider at World Tour level.
Luke posted a comment in our chat asking us, should Balsamo
ride
MSR? Because she's not on the list right now, but
no,
that could be the wrong list.
That can't be correct.
that it's possible that is not correct because she should.
They're Italian. It's an Italian race. She's Italian. They also have no other way to win the race. And she just won a harder version of it today against all the riders that will be there plus Kopecky.
She has to ride it.
I mean, she has to. Like, I'll call Little Trek. That's... No, I can't. I don't believe it. Because, next week we'll do the preview, of course, but there is a longer climb. But again, the Cipress is 4.5 Ks at like 4.6%. It's not that hard.
Spoilers. Preview spoilers. That's for later in the week.
Fuck, man, the Poggio is easy, isn't it? See, the women's is so different to the men's because the women's race distance is a normal race distance for them. It's 150 Ks. It's quite long, but not. The men's San Remo is 7 hours in the saddle. So the Poggio hits different. For the women, it's not. They don't do the Passo Turchino. So
I don't mind it for the first year, though.
Me either. No. I'm not saying it should be longer. I'm just saying I expect them more likely that a sprinter wins.
299 kilometers as well. I'm sorry.
Nope. A lot of Claes wins by 25. A lot of Claes wins by 30 minutes. Okay, anything else from this weekend of racing, Benji? Istrian Spring Trophy. Adrien Boissy wins. He just joined Red Bull Houndsgora Rookies after being on Trinity Racing. He's had a few injury or illness issues the previous years. Massive talent, mountain bike rider who's converting to the road, and it looks like it's going well so far this year. Wins the 2.2 race ahead of some good riders, ahead of the Visma Devo riders, ahead of the UAE Best Devo riders. So shout out to Adrian, who I know is also listening.
Adrien.
Sorry, I Australian didn't I? Adrian.
Adrian Boichis.
He's good. So look out for him in Baby Giro, Tour de l'Avenir later in the year.
Bartali,
exactly. Adria Pericas second, Callum Thornley third. Pericas won the stage. He's like a diminutive climber for UAE who's been traveling the world. They sent him to a Lula tour, then back to Spain, then in the same month to Rwanda, now to Croatia. Good performance from him uphill, the 18-year-old.
All right. Keeps performing. Like, this guy was a rider on Rembe. Met him last year at Tour of Antalya. Super nice guy. Was then one of those guys that would just go in the breakaway, like a German Conti team. And he became New Zealand national champion this year. 6th in Istrian Spring Trophy. Like, he's 27, so he's not a new kid on the block, but third in Porets Classic. I'm sorry, but this guy's actually good.
Yep. Oh, I just realized for GC Benji. Oh, wow.
What?
Well, it looks like it was a sprint, right? It was a full-on sprint because it was won by Dusan Rajovic. But then they've put half the peloton on 5 seconds because someone's left a gap, I think. Like, I think it was a sprint of like 100 riders. But then for GC, it's completely changed it because the gaps are so small.
Oh my God. That's ridiculous.
So Pattinson loses the podium because they put a gap.
That's low-key funny, I'm not going to lie.
It is, yeah. Any other races?
Mate,
Tour of Roads?
Whatever else was happening today.
I got another one.
Fuck off.
There's another half English rider who's French on Astana Devo. Okay? Now, I know his first name's Pierre, but it's Pierre Henry Bassett. Henry Bassett. I know it's actually Pierre-Henri Basset, but no. English. It's Pierre Henry Bassett.
A Bassett sounds like a fish.
It's a Basset hound. It's a double
Bassett.
dog. Anyway, he's actually looked good this year. He wins Tour of Roads powered by Rhodos Palace, winning the final stage. As
happy
well
for you.
And also the Russian the Russian track pursuit team went to an Italian 1.2 race and did a lead out, and Smirnov won.
You're not gonna be looking at all these results, mention everything, but then don't mention an Australian guy winning in the Tour de Taiwan.
Oh, Blake Quick, non-native determinism won in Tour de Taiwan, also pro race as well, in a sprint. And also should mention the juniors, Baby Binder. So
I'm out. I'm not having this anymore.
You're not doing women's junior N Cup races. All right. Benji needs to go. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll see you with the San Remo preview on Wednesday, as well as maybe the weekly show Tuesday afternoon. No promises. Till then, ciao, ciao.